Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar by Wolters Kluwer on recent changes made by Finance Act 2020 with regards to charitable or religious trust or institution. Our speaker today is CA Dr. N. Suresh. Dr. N. Suresh is a graduate in commerce from Bangalore University and a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. He did his PhD on the following subjects: taxation system and practices in India, and NGOs, NPOs, legal systems and practices in India. He has authored several books and articles on varied topics relating to corporate laws and taxation. He has presented several papers and has given lectures at seminars and conferences conducted by the professional bodies, study circles, various branches of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, Committee of Cooperative and NPO sectors. He has actively participated in various public forums addressing various issues and has been a visiting faculty at the National Academy of Direct Taxes, Nagpur, and DRTI, Bangalore and Chennai. He has been co-opted as a member of Committee for Cooperatives and NPO Sectors, ICAI. During the webinar, if you have any questions, you may please put up the question on the Q&A panel towards the bottom of the webinar window. We will address these towards the end of the webinar. It is now over to Dr. N. Suresh.
Good afternoon, all of you. Thanks the team. Now, the Finance Act 2020 have brought sea changes with regard to the charitable trust or institutions, particularly with regard to the registration and procedure of registration of charitable trust or institutions, as well education institutions, hospitals, and also with regard to donors benefit called the ATG. So this Finance Act 2020 has made structural changes, and the earlier provisions has been given go by. The procedure of the registrations has been substituted by the new provisions. And also with regard to the categories of people who have to make an application, the new provisions has been brought in. Now, one of the main objective of this bringing these structural changes is that the government wants to maintain the national register, because until now, the registration was decentralized, and now the unifications have to be brought in by keeping up a national register. And also they want to give you an identity number, a unique identification number to all the institutions. As a result of this, that there will be a better monitoring of these institutions. And one of the prominent aspects which has been brought in, the first time in the history of this in India, is with regard to the renewal of registration of charitable trust and institutions. Because at one point of time, the registration granted to charitable or religious trust or institution had a lifetime. There was no concept of renewal of registration. Only in 1998, new provisions has been brought in, where the power has been given for the commissioner for cancellation of registration. So then there was some changes were made depending upon the requirement at a particular point of time. Now, this Finance Act 2020 has brought a concept called the renewal of registration. So once the registration is done under the new provision called Section 12AB, which has a life of 5 years, then it has to be renewed. It has to be renewed 6 months prior to the expiry date, and applications have to be In fact, there are already in the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, there is a concept of the renewal of registration. Similarly, under the Income Tax Act, they have brought these changes. So now, what are the effect of these changes? First, let me go over to the new provision called Section 12A1, which has been brought in the statute book. This is a new provision brought by the Finance Act 2020. And the brief requirement of this 12.1 is that it categorizes the person who has to seek an approval or the registration. The first category relates to the existing trust or institution. So many of them have expressed a concern. Is there any need for an existing trust or institution again to register under the new provisions of the Income Tax Act under Section 12AB? Answer is yes. Because Section 12A within brackets 1AC warrants for even the existing trust or institution has to make an application under this provision, and it has to be processed and approval or registration to be granted under Section 12AB. Then the second category is called the renewal of trust or institutions. As I reiterated earlier, they brought the concept of the renewal of trust or institution, because once the registration is granted, it has a span of 5 years. Before 6 months of the expiry of the period, trust or institution has to seek the renewal. So therefore, those which is getting expired, they have to make an application for renewal in order to avail the exemption under the provisions of the Income Tax Act. Then the third category called provisionally registered. So what is provisionally? What is the expression provisionally, under which context they have used has not been defined under the new provision. To my loud thinking, under the earlier provisions of 12A1 and 12AA, there was a cat-and-mouse litigation with regard to whether the new trust or institution should be granted the registration or not. The reason for this litigation was, under Section 12AA of the Income Tax Act, the Commissioner of Income Tax has to satisfy twin aspects. Firstly, the trust or institution, whether they have charitable objects or not, they have to satisfy. And secondly, whether they have carried out the genuine activities or not, to be examined by the Commissioner. And based on the combined analysis of this, the Commissioner has to give approval. Suppose he is not satisfied with one of them, either he may reject the application. So in such circumstances, the problem has cropped up in case of new startup trust or new institutions, because there is no bar for the new institution to apply for seeking the registration. So therefore, when they constitute a trust, when they make an application, then they might not have carried out the activities. So therefore, in such circumstances, issue came up whether registration to be granted or not. And most of the time, commissioners were rejecting the application. So in that context, the overwhelming majority of the tribunal and the High Court have took the decision, held the view that in case of the newly started trust or institution, satisfying that they have carried out the genuine activities is not warranted. That means Commissioner have to satisfy whether they have charitable objects or not. If it is so, then registration has to be granted. Now, bringing this here, they call it as a provisionally. That means they have not carried out the activities, but they have constituted. Such category will fall within the meaning of provisionally. So that provisionally you can register under section 12AB, and once it's registered, it has certain stand. Again, they have to apply for registration. Then the next category is called trusted institution inoperative. You know, the trusted institution, because in some cases what happens, two provisions comes into play. Say for example, the educational institution. If the educational institutions, the term education is a charitable object which falls within the limb of section 215 of the Income Tax Act 1961. Again, the educational institution, section 1023C also applies. So when the educational institution solely exists for educational purposes, but not for the purposes of profit, then section 1023C will apply. Now, at one point of time, it was an option for the associate, trust or institution, to claim exemption either under section 11 or under section 1023C. But in 2014, the law was amended. They said either you have to claim an exemption under section 11 or under section 1023C, but vice versa, you cannot claim an exemption. Either you have to claim one exemption in one particular section, one code of section that would apply for the subsequent years. So therefore, when 1023C applies, when section 11 applies, or 12A applies, then one of them will cease. Now, when such institution ceases to be operative, now under section 12(1)(a)(c), they can take an option and then come back. Instead of section 12AA, they can go with section 12AB now, and section 11 when they can claim an exemption by registering. Therefore, this opportunity has been brought in again. Okay. Nevertheless, in only one particular section that they can claim an exemption. Then the next category is called the modification of objects. You know, the modification of objects, what the law requires is, when there is any modification of objects which do not conform to the object for which the registration has been granted, then whenever there is a modification of object, then fresh registration has to be sought and it has to be registered. So here there was quite a number of contentious issues has come up in the past. The reason was whether the objects of the trust can be modified. If so, which are the objects can be modified? When there is any modification of objects, whether prior permission from the Commissioner of Income Tax was required or not. Because invariably, in case of trust, there will be a clause which the department insists that any amendment should not be repugnant to the provisions of the section 215 ATG and so forth. And also, there will be a recital saying that prior permission of the commissioner was to be obtained. Now, question came up whether modification, yes, modification of objects can be done to the extent power is provided in the trustee. Because first, any modification of object, you must find out from the instrument whether there is any power for modification. Secondly, you must examine whether which of the objects can be modified. Is it all objects can be modified or few objects can be modified to be examined. Now, when there is a power, then the third issue is whether you have to seek the prior permission from the Commissioner of Income Tax. Here, there is a landmark judgment from the Delhi High Court in Shakti Charities case, which has upheld the view that seeking prior permission from the Commissioner of Income Tax was not required, because the reason given by the court was that there is no privy of contract between the tax department and the trustee. As such, the trust, therefore, seeking prior permission was not warranted. Then again, there is a judgment of the Supreme Court in CIT versus Kamala Town Trust case reported in 279 ITR, where the court has held the view that seeking prior permission from the commissioner was not required. And modification of the objects, if there is a power for modification, the Board of Trustees can do modification of object. The question was, because of the judgment of the Supreme Court, a vacuum was created. Because at the time of granting the registration, that certain objects have been brought to the cognizance of the Commission of Income Tax. Then if subsequently the Board of Trustees makes modification of objects without the knowledge of the Commission of Income Tax, and subsequently, if the income is appraised towards the modified object, how it satisfies the test of Section 11? Because Section 11 of the Income Tax specifies as income to be appraised for such purposes in India. The such purposes has a broader meaning and connotes that those objects which has been at the time of seeking the registration and with the cognizance of the Commission of Income Tax. If there is any modification of object without the knowledge of the commissioner or their permission, then it is not strictly satisfied the test of Section 11. So in such a circumstances, what to do? There was an anomalous situation. So therefore, in 2017, the 2017 Finance Act has bridged this vacuum, and they brought a changes which warrants that any modification of object, you need not approach the Commission of Income Tax. However, when it is not within the conforming to the objects for which the registration has been granted, in such circumstances, fresh registration has to be applied before the Commission of Income Tax and approval to be given. So similarly, those modification of objects under the new provisions, they have to apply within 15 days from the date in which that modification of objects has been done. And one important point is that there is no discretionary for the commissioner to condone the delay in case of delay in making an application. So therefore, earnestly, that institution has to apply within 15 days from the date of modification of objects. So the last category is called any other cases. That means those other than what has been just now I have said, called as any other cases, and those any other cases, they have to make an application and seek a registration in order to claim an exemption under the provisions of the income tax. And there is a judgment of the Supreme Court in UP Forest case which emphasizes that registration of under Section 12A or 12AA earlier, now Section 12AB is a mandatory requirement for seeking exemption. If the registration is not done, then exemption will not be available. Now let's see in the next slide. Next slide, time limit for making an application. So I have reiterated who are to make an application. Now, the categories, what time that they have to make an application. You know, the existing trust or institutions, they have to make an application within 3 months from the date in which this clause come into force. You know, this law comes into force from 1st of June 2020. However, there is a press release, but no notification that this will come into force from 1st of October 2010, but we are not very sure about it because there is no notification towards this. As per the law now, 1st June 2020, it comes into force. Then second category called the trust institution for the renewal. They have to make an application at least 6 months prior to the expiry of the set period. Then the third category is called provisionally registered. There they have to make at least 6 months prior to expiry of the period of the provisional registration or within 6 months of commencement of its activities, whichever earlier. Then the last two category called whenever is inoperative, just which has become inoperative, then they have to make an application at least 6 months prior to the commencement of the assessment year from which the said registration is sought to be made. Then, in case there is any modification of object within a period of 30 days from the date of the said adoption or modification, I'm sorry, earlier I said 15 days, that has been modified to 30 days, they have to make an application within a period of 30 days from the date of the said adoption or modification. Then the last category called any other cases, at least 1 month prior to the commencement of the previous year, relevant to the assessment year from which the said registration is sought, they have to make an application. So this is the time frame within which an application to be made. Now let's see what is the time limit for which, what is the time limit under which they have to dispose the application. But before that, let me come back with the transitional provisions. So what is the transitional provision? Because there has been a wide apprehension in respect of two aspects. One is, assuming that you have constituted a trust in the month of March and you have made an application for seeking the registration. And now in the meantime, new provisions has come into force. The question is whether you have to make an application afresh under the new provisions of the income tax, since your application has not been disposed of. This is one limb of the issue. The second limb of the issue is, now the new law is coming into force during this financial year 2020-21, that is from 1st June 2020. Now what is the position with regard to exemption under section 11 and 12 in respect of for the months of April, May, whether you continue to get the benefit of exemption? So this has been clarified by bringing a provision in section 12A within brackets 2, which is that in case any application which has been made for which the order has not been passed by the Commissioner of Income Tax, then it is deemed the application has been filed under the new provision as if any other cases, and it will be disposed accordingly. And with regard to the second limb, that whether exemption applies for month of April, May, law is very clear. The exemption continues to be applied, and the exemption will be applicable even for those periods also. Now the next question is the pending application. I just now reiterated in this regard. Now time limit. Now there is another provisions which has been brought in section 12A. 1B is with regard to furnishing of the audit report. Now, the furnishing of the audit report in 10B and 10BB and all that, what is the time limit which you have to furnish the audit report? Now, here, the date has been specified by referring to the tax audit report as contained in section 44AB of the Income Tax Act 1961. Because the tax audit will apply in case of business or a profession carried by an associate. If the turnover, the gross turnover exceeds the certain specified limit, then it warrants for a tax audit. And tax audit report, filing of the tax audit report and filing the return has been specified therein. Now, the report under section 12A1B is to be in line with the time specified under section 44AB. Now, due date for filing the return of income is 31st of October relating to 31st March, and audit report has to be uploaded 30 days prior to the due date for filing the return of income. Say for example, 31st October 2020 is the due date for filing the tax audit report. Then 30 days prior to that, that is 30th of September is the due date in which audit report of this charitable trust or institution has to be uploaded. The reasons for why this has to be, because earlier the position was that filing the return of income, you can upload the tax audit report, you can upload the audit report of charitable trust or institution. But now warrants 30 days prior to the due date for filing the return of income, one has to upload the audit report. The reason for this uploading 30 days prior to the due date for filing is not very clear in this regard. Now let me come back to the next called the procedure. See, now I have reiterated. So what has been brought in section 12A within bracket 1 AC and 12A subsection 2 of the Income Tax Act. Now the procedure, once you make an application, the next aspect is with regard to the procedure, because once the application is filed, then duty of the commissioner comes into force, and commissioner of income tax has to look into the application and dispose the application. This is called, technically referred to as procedure for the registration. The procedure for registration is contained in new provision 12AB. You know, in section 12 earlier, the provision 12AA was dealing with procedure for registration. That has been dispensed with, and new provision has been brought in. Now section 12AB. Now section 12AB, the governing provisions, you have section 12AB1, section 12AB2, 12AB3, 12AB4, and 12AB5. And with regard to that, section 12AB4 and section 12AB5 deals with the cancellation of registration. Rest of them deals with procedure for registration. Now, once the application is filed under section 12A1C, then comes the disposal of the application. The commissioner will look into the application file and he has to dispose the application. Before disposing of the application, commissioner has to satisfy two important aspects. One is the objects contained in the deed of trust. First, he has to satisfy. Second, he has to satisfy the genuineness of the activities, whether they have carried out genuineness of the activities. If then the third requirement is with regard to compliances of any other law for the time being in force, which any other law for the time being in force which affects for achievements of the objects of the trust. So now, the having a charitable objects, carrying the genuine activities is something understandable. So commissioner has to satisfy with that. And with so far as the compliances of any other law for the time being in force, one will get confused which of the acts that would apply. Say, for example, in case of charitable trust, whether Societies Act would apply, whether you have to consider the Societies Act, whether you have to consider Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, whether you have to consider the Indian Trust Act, whether you have to consider the Provident Fund Act. So which are the acts that you have to consider? Suppose you have not complied with section under the Provident Fund Act, just because of this, whether registration can be refused or registration can be cancelled with. So this has to be examined. The tenor of language as used in 12AB1B is that compliances of any other law for the time being in force for achieving the objects. That means that compliances of an enactment which affects for achieving the object have to be considered. Say, for example, in case of Societies Act, it is a structure. Suppose society is constituted. And if the society is constituted, that is a structure. That is an entity. If there is a non-compliances under the Societies Act, where an order has been passed for the closure of this society, then in such circumstances, it affects for the achievement of the objects of the trust. So once a decree is passed or order is passed, which has been challenged, under which the decree is again in favor of the department, which has either not been challenged in the court or has been challenged in the court, where the court has passed an order in favor of the department in such circumstances, then under the Income Tax Act, the commissioner can cancel the registration. Or at the time of making an application, he may refuse to grant the registration. So likewise, the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, because foreign contribution, the amount received towards the foreign contribution affects the achievement of the object, non-compliances of the foreign contribution. Then when it reaches the finality of the order, then in such a circumstances, under Section 12AB, either registration may not be granted or it may be cancelled under Section 12AB. So therefore, these are the aspects to be looked into. But the background for this is that, because this has been brought by the Finance Act 2019, same thing has been continued in Section 12AB. Because the background for this is, see, under the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, quite a number of institutions, registration has been cancelled. Though the registration has been cancelled under the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act 2010, but those institutions have been continued to claim an exemption under the Income Tax Act under Section 11 and 12. So now the situation has changed. If there is any order passed for cancellation of registration under the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, based on this information available, then registration can be cancelled by the Commissioner under Section 1280 of the Income Tax Act. Now the next issue is, whom does this inquiry would apply? As far as this inquiry is concerned, in case of existing trusted institution, which they would apply for seeking a registration, once again, in such cases, making an inquiry will not apply, and other cases, the inquiry would apply. So now I would like to deal with the time limit. Time limit for passing the order. Time limit for passing the order. What is the time frame which order to be passed by the Commission of Income Tax? Now in case of, again different categories you have to look at it. Then in case of existing trusted institution, the order has to be passed before expiry of period of 3 months, calculated from the end of the month in which the application was received. Please note, within 3 months that you have to make an application, and now Commissioner has to pass an order before expiry of period of 3 months. So 3 months order has to be passed. And in case of renewal of registration, 6 months time calculated from the end of the month in which the application was received, order has to be passed. And likewise in case of provisionally registered also, 6 months calculated from the end of the month in which application was received, order has to be passed. So now in case of where in operation of due to first proviso to Section 11(7), the time limit is again 6 months, calculated from the end of the month in which the application was received. And in case of modification of object, the time limit is 6 months, calculated from the end of the month in which application was received, order has to be passed by the Commissioner. Then in any other cases, that is the residuary provision, that the time limit is 1 month calculated from the end of the month in which the application was received. So this is the time in which Commissioner of Income Tax has to pass an order. The next question is, what is the tenure of validity of the registration? Because earlier I have reiterated that maximum time allowed is 5 years. This is the first time under the law that renewal of registration has been brought in. And in case of the existing trust or institution, that the tenure of the registration granted will hold good for 5 years. Likewise, in all cases, it will be for 5 years, except the last case in which any other cases which have been filed. An order in writing registering the trust institution is for a period. Because all other cases will have a life of 5 years, except in case of any other cases. And this residuary provision provides for the life of the tenure of registration for a period of 3 years. Then, before expiry of 6 months from the 3 years, a fresh application has to be filed. Now, under what circumstances? Now I have reiterated, there is a requirement for making an application, and based on the application, the commissioner has to look at it. There is a set of procedure, and commissioner has to follow the procedure, and he has to pass the order. Now the next question is, under what circumstances the rejection of application by the Commissioner of Income Tax can be made? Now, I have earlier said that the Commissioner has to satisfy the requirement of whether charitable trust has a charitable object and they have carried out the genuine activities. And the third was with regard to compliances of any other law for the time being in force. So these three important aspects to be considered by the Commissioner of Income Tax while granting the registration. If all these conditions have been satisfied, then he may grant the registration. If these conditions has not been satisfied with, then Commissioner can reject the application, but before rejecting the application, an opportunity of hearing has to be given. It is a built-in provision in the interest of natural justice, an opportunity of hearing to be given based on which a rejection of application can be made. And one of the interesting issue is that, is there any deeming registration under the Income Tax Act under the new provision? Under the earlier provisions in section 12AA, question came up because the time limit set for Commissioner passed the order is within 6 months from the end of the month in which the application filed, he has to pass the order. In case order was not passed, then what happens? In such circumstances, can you deem that registration has been granted? Because the language used was not happily worded in this regard. See, unlike the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act of 1976, in that enactment, there was a specific provision that has been brought in, saying that if the application is not disposed of within the specified time limit, then in such circumstances, it was deemed that registration has been granted. So deeming fiction has been brought into the provisions. Now in 2010, in the FCRA Act 2010, again, deeming fiction has been removed. But under the Income Tax Act, the tenor of language used is not happily worded whether deeming fiction will apply or not. Under the earlier provision, in section 12AA, question came up, is there any deeming law with regard to registration of charitable trust or institution? In that case, catena of decisions have come, started from Karnataka Golf Association in 1998, where the application was filed for registration. It has taken up for process in 2001 and application was rejected. This was challenged. And finally, that court held that in such circumstances, deeming fiction will apply. So overwhelming was of the view, deeming registration will apply. But later on, the development was, the Madras High Court has held the view that under section 12AA, the deeming registration provision will not apply. It is incumbent upon the commissioner. Commissioner has to pass an order. Therefore, there is no provision for deeming registration. Commissioner has to pass an order with regard to 12AA. Then there is another judgment, full bench decision of the Allahabad High Court, where the Allahabad High Court also held the view saying that deeming registration provision is not in existence. Therefore, it will not apply. So then overwhelming majority of the cases, has reversed. Then in 2016, as Supreme Court came in a judgment in 372 ITR saying that deeming registration will apply. So now, considering the requirement of section 12AB, most of the time now, the time limit has been settled. In case there is any delay or in case the application has not been disposed of within the time frame, I think the Supreme Court judgment still holds good even under the new provisions. Then cancellation of registration. Cancellation of registration earlier was contained in section 12AA within brackets 3 of the Income Tax Act. Now it has been brought under section 12AB within brackets 4 and within brackets 5. So prominently here, the charitable trusted institutions, once the registration is granted, they have to carry the activities. In case they do not carry the activities, or the activity which they carry is not in accordance with the objects contained in the deed of trust, then when there is a cancellation, when there is a non-complying of any other enactment which affects the achievement of the object, in such circumstances, the scope of cancellation of registration comes into force. Then under such circumstances, registration can be cancelled. But one of the prominent controversial issue which has been brought in even by the Finance Act 2019 and again been brought in section 12AB within brackets 4 is with regard to whenever there is section 13(1) applies, in such circumstances, the registration can be cancelled by the Commission of Income Tax. If you look back to section 13, it has the two limbs. One is section 13(1)A to 13(1)D, and secondly with regard to section 13(2)A to section 13(2)H. Section 13(2)A to section 13(2)H, they are termed as deemed restricted user. So there's no prohibition, but certain qualitative aspects has been brought in over there. Now, say for example, if remuneration paid to the trustee, and the remuneration paid to the trustee, if in the opinion of the AO or assessing officer is not reasonable, then what happens? There is a provision called section 2 within bracket C, which allows the remuneration to the trustee. There is no bar. The remuneration can be paid, but it should be a reasonable amount. But what is reasonable amount is a question of fact. Now, for example, if a remuneration is paid to the trustee, say 1,50,000 per month, amounting to 18 lakhs per annum, then in the course of the scrutiny, that AO, assessing officer, comes to the inference or conclusion saying that remuneration worth for the trustee reasonable is only to the extent of 1 lakh per month or 12 lakhs per annum. Then 50,000 is an extra payment made by the trust to the trustee. So therefore, to this extent, there is a personal gain to the specified person as referred to in section 13(3) of the Income Tax Act. Therefore, prominently falls within section 13(1)C of the Income Tax Act. Because in section 12AB(4), they have referred to section 13(1). They have not specified the further classification under which cancellation of registration can be made. They have broadly brought in section 13(1). So section 13(1)C also covers in section 13(1). Therefore, when the excess remuneration paid to in the opinion of the AO falls under section 13(1)C, under circumstances, registration can be cancelled. So this power of the commissioner invoking section 13(1)(c) has been widened. This is very dangerous. Now it's the right time that CBDT has to come with a clarification under what circumstances cancellation of registration can be made. Otherwise, the denying institution would suffer on account of this. So now these are the procedure contained in provisions of the section 12AB. Similarly, in case of this ATG, the donor, there are other two aspects that they have made legislative changes. Next one, ATG. Now, just I would like to touch upon some of the changes they made with regard to the donors benefit of section ATG. You know, this first time again in ATG, they have brought the concept of making a fresh application and seek the registration, similar to one which I have reiterated earlier. And apart from that, there are certain new provisions that they have brought in. What are those things? Firstly, there is a obligation now set for the institution to furnish a statement to the authorities under section ATG 5 within brackets 8. Now, just like 26 years, now the new provision which says that every trust or institution, whenever they receive any donation, either quarterly or half-yearly or annually, they will prescribe in the rule. They also prescribe the manner in which that information or a statement to be furnished. This has to be uploaded to the department. So these are just like 26 years, just like ETDS, same thing has to be followed in. And the second requirement is that every institution or a trust which receives a donation, now it is incumbent upon them to issue a certificate. Again, the specimen or the form in which that certificate to be issued will be notified. Under those specified form, the donor has to be given a certificate. Suppose there is a failure to furnish a statement to the authorities in respect of ATG 5, then what happens? The benefit of exemption will not go to the donor, because once the donor claims an exemption, then it will be cross-checked with this, just like the 26 years. If it does not find a place in 26 years, you don't get the credit of the TDS. Similarly, in case of the donation, unless it finds a place in the statement which is furnished to the authorities, then benefit of exemption claimed under section ATG may be denied. Then the other important aspect is with regard to renewal. You know, just like 12A, I have reiterated that once the registration is granted under section or approval granted under ATG, then it has to be renewed. There's a time limit for which just it will have 4 years, except in case of any other cases, which has a 3 years. Prior to 6 months of that, fresh registration or approval application have to be filed. So now, due to want of time, I will skip this tenure of the requirement and the other aspects, because this is similar to one which I have reiterated in section 12A(1)(c) as well as in 12AB. Time limit has been set in. Now I will go to the next for 5 minutes. I will deal with regard to the hospital fund or trust or institution and hospital or medical institutions. You know, here also the requirement is with regard to, there is a complete changes with regard to the requirement of claiming exemption under section 10. Now, section 10 also now warrants that fund, trust, or education institution or a hospital which has been claiming exemption under Section 23 AC, now they have to seek fresh registration, and for this an application has to be filed by an existing fund or trust institution, usually other education institution, likewise hospital or other medical institutions also. Then fund or trust institutions, hospital which has required for approval or renewal, because the concept of renewal or registration, which I have earlier reiterated, would apply here also. Then again, provisionally registered institutions also, they have to make an application for registration. And the last category is called any other cases under Section 1024. They have to make an application for seeking an approval or registration. Now again, there is a time limit for making an application. In case of existing trusted institution, the 3 months is the time which comes into force from 1st June 2020. In other cases, except the last, is the 6 month. And in case of any other cases, 1 month prior to the commencement of the previous year relevant to the assessment year from the said approval have to be sought. So likewise, the power is vested with the commissioner. Commissioner will make an inquiry. This is similar to what has been earlier dealt with regard to Section 1280, because the commissioner has to look into the object, look into the activities carried out, and look into whether the compliance of such requirement of any other law for the time being enforced by it as our material for the achievement of the objects to be looked into. If it is complied with, if all these conditions is complied with, then registration will be granted. Again, time limit of passing the order in case of existing trust, 3 months calculated from the end of the month. In all cases, 6 months time, except in any other cases, period of 1 month has been brought in. Again, with regard to the validity of registration, just like in 1280, the validity will hold good for a period of 5 years, except the last one in any other cases is for 3 years. So when the validity of 5 years prior to 6 months, again fresh application has to be filed. Then rejection of application in 1023, similar to the one, because if the condition of objects, if the condition of carrying out the genuine objects, activities, and condition with regard to complaints of any other law, if it is not complied with in such circumstances, application will be rejected, but there is a built-in provision, an opportunity of hearing to be given in the interest of natural justice. And after the hearing, application can be rejected. Then payment registration, I have reiterated earlier, similar principle would apply here. So now these are in brief the summary of the amendment which has been carried out by the Finance Act 2020 with regard to the charitable trust or religious trust or institution, with regard to registration and with regard to approval under Section 80G, etc. Now, any questions? I welcome.
Thank you so much, sir. There are actually a lot of questions that we have, and I would like to quickly start addressing them.
Okay.
So we have Ms. Komal Sachdev who has asked that 40AIA is to be disallowed notwithstanding the exemption under Section 11M. Then there are fields for disallowing some under Section 40AIA in the ITR form, but no fields for allowing 100%, 30% of the sums if TDS is deducted in later years. Will sum paid in later years not be allowed as deduction for loss or set off in future years?
So here there is a controversial issue with regard to whenever the TDS is not deducted, because now for charitable trust or institution is just like any other business or profession, they have to deduct the taxes in accordance with the provisions contained there. Okay. In case there is a short deduction or no deduction of TDS, then in such circumstances, two issue arises. Now the issue is, to the extent that you are not deducted the TDS, whether such expenses, will you call it as an application of income, or whether you have to pay the taxes on that. But the plain reading of this amendment, which has been carried out by the Finance Act 2018, clears that in case where there is no deduction of TDS or short deduction of TDS, which is not in accordance with the provisions of the Income Tax Act, then to that extent, it should not be treated as an application. I'll just give you an illustration example. Say, for example, 1 crore is the total expenses that you
I guess we're facing some technical issues. We'll back, please. We're expecting Dr. Suresh to just join back in. Everybody, please be with us. Sorry for the inconvenience. We're in constant touch with Dr. Suresh. She's going to be back really soon. Everybody, please stay on with us. And in the meanwhile, if you have any questions, you may please put them up on the questions and answer panel. We will extend the duration of the webinar so that your questions can be addressed.
Hello? Hello?
Come back, sir. You're audible.
Now we can continue.
Yes. So I will ask you the next question now.
The same question should I answer?
Yes, please.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question because of the non-deduction of the TDL. If you read into section 11, it's very clear. To the extent the TDS is not deducted, to that extent should not be treated as an application of income. But however, in the ITR return, it has given a different treatment altogether. So my reading is of this provision is clear. To that extent, it should not be treated as an application of income. It can't be brought to tax having not deducted TDS. Okay, next question.
So Amarjeet Kamboj has asked that forms for registration, re-registration of trust have not so far notified. Can unregistered trust apply in existing forms? Or will it has to apply again in new forms?
Sure, because now it has been entire the provisions has been restructured. Now those existing institutions and those which has not been registered even under the earlier provision, they can make an application and seek the registration in order to get the benefit of tax exemption. They can.
Thank you so much, sir. I'll go over to a question by CA Rakesh Soni. He's asked that whether running and maintenance of Gaushala can be termed as religious activity.
I think there is a judgment in respect of Gujarat High Court, which has upheld the view that running Gaushala to be treated as a charitable act.
Perfect. And there is a question by Ms. Aruna. This is if the submission of application is already done, which is not processed yet by the income tax authority yet, such applications should be resubmitted?
Now here they have brought a transitional provision under section 12 AP within brackets 2. Once you made an application under the old act which has not been disposed of, you need not make any fresh application. The application which you had earlier filed deemed to have been applied as any other cases, then registration has to be granted accordingly. You need not make any fresh application. There's no need for it.
Okay. We have a question from Mr. Hitendra Bhandari, who has asked that what is the information that needs to be furnished for registration of these trusts?
See, now the specified form for which you have to make an application has not been notified. It is only a guess what need to be furnished, but we are not very sure about it. We have to wait for specified notification and specified form will be brought in. So far it has not been notified. We have to wait for that.
Moving on to the next question, which is from Mr. Sriram Puranik, who has asked that if the trust is carrying activity, say education and medical relief, whether this trust needs two separate registrations or returns.
Pardon? Separate?
Registrations or returns.
See, of course, when you have educational institutions, and you must see whether have you already been registered or not. Suppose you have coming under section 1023C. Now, because 1023C up to 1 crore blanket limit has been given. If you are an education institution existing for solely for educational purposes, not for the purposes of profit. If your gross annual receipt exceeds 1 crore and above, now either you have to be registered under section 1023C or you have to go with section 12AB. Under the new provisions, one of them you have to elect and you have to seek a registration.
Okay, sir. Next question is from Mr. Sameer Kapoor, who has asked that application for registration rejected, appeal filed before ITAT, followed in the month of May 20, whether a fresh application will be filed or not.
Yeah, see now, notwithstanding that matter is before the appellate authorities, you have a right to apply afresh, no issue at all. You can apply. Even under the new provisions that you can make an application, and only in the course of the examination probably they may ask whether you have an existing reason for rejections and all that, which you can convince on that. But there's no bar for you to make application now under the new provisions. You can.
We have a question from Mr. Amit K here, who has asked that can a Section 8 company, which is following accrual system of account, report the income as per P&L, or do we need to calculate the receipts on cash basis?
See now, in case of Section 8 company under the Companies Act, of course, you are following the accrual system. The issue which arises is that when you make an accrual system where funds would not have come, but by passing the entry based on the understanding or an agreement, whatever, that you are recognizing the income. Because under Section 11, the charitable trust or institution have an obligation to apply 85% of the income towards charitable purposes. So now Section 11(1)(a) specifies that 85% have to be applied for charitable purposes. So in case of passing an accrual entry, what happens? You are reflecting an income, okay? But at the same time, funds would not have come in. In such circumstances, you have two options. That one is you have to file form number 9 because you have recognized the income, but funds have not come in. Therefore, there is a deficit of, and there is an accumulation of income, which you can file form number 9. The second alternative is that under the Companies Act, you have recognized the accrual accounting, but under the Income Tax Act, you can elect to go with the in-cash system of accounting. That you can do that. So choices is between them to elect one of them. But you have to continue to comply or follow the same system of accounting. Because you can't switch on one side the accrual, other is cash, and vice versa. You can elect which is the best suits for your company and follow it.
Right. We have a question from Mr. Ashok Bhandari, which is that if an educational institution provides CBSE syllabus, can we apply for ATG registration? And sir, I'll request you to speak up a little or maybe move a little closer to your laptop because your audio is not entirely clear.
Okay, now?
If we can be slightly louder.
All right, tell me. Now you said that CBSE, may I request you to repeat the question?
Yeah, so that if an educational institution provides CBSE syllabus, can we apply for ATG registration?
Yeah, why not? As long as you have education is an object, you are imparting the education, you are running an education institution, whether CBSE or a state subject, HSE, doesn't make difference. You can apply for ATG. You can.
I will take up the next question quickly now, which is from CA Anup Vittal, which is trusts are usually granted exemption under Section 12AA based on the objects of the trust. Suppose a trust donates to a fund like the PM CARES or COVID relief, and the objects of trust are not to donate to other trusts. Can this be claimed as application of income or such donation under 85% limit? If not, can trusts claim this as a deduction under Section 80G?
So now the question is whether now the COVID-19 probably, the question possibly, let me understand the questions better. The question is in the COVID-19, whether the donation received can be applied for the COVID-19 objects. Is this the question?
Right.
Yes, now first you must find out what are your objects. No doubt that you receive the donation. Again, donation can be either voluntary donation or as a corpus donation, different matter. Now, once you receive the donation, question is, what for that you can apply this donation? Then you have to look back to your objects. What are the objects that you have contained in the deed of trust? Only those objects that you can apply. Suppose you have health, or suppose relief of the poor you have a medical and then advancement of general public utility that you have, then in such a circumstances, you can apply this. Suppose you do not have any of these things, then you are restrained, you can't apply. So in such circumstances, you have to modify the object, then seek the permission, then you can apply for it. First, you focus on the objects that is contained therein, and once there is a permission to spend on that, you can apply. Okay?
We have a question which is, a trust started to construct a hospital on a land granted by the government. But the earlier owners of the land, farmers, raised a dispute and got a stay to maintain status quo. The trust has not done any other activity other than checking the status of the dispute between the former owners and the government. Does this forced inaction on the part of the trust amount to not continuing the activities of the?
See, now the question is, they have granted the land, but still there are the litigation, some of the issues are there, but you have not carried out the activities. So therefore, having not carried out the activities, probably the commissioner may take up on suo moto, because now once the law is changed, when the time of the renewal, probably getting of information will be called in. If the activities is not carried out, then probably they may give a show cause as to why registration should not be rejected with that. So therefore, in such a circumstances, when there is an impossibility for you to carry the activities, because you have intent to carry the charitable activities, but for the circumstances which has been there in existence, probably you may be able to convince, and you can litigate, take up in the court also. Probably you may succeed, because there is a judgment when there is an impossibility of the performance due to the prevailing circumstances that can be exempted. I think that's the answer.
Okay, I'll go on to a question by Mr. Bhavik Khanderia, which is that what is the time limit for filing application in case of compulsory renewal of registration under 12A?
See, now this registration renewal comes later, because presently there's no requirement of renewal of registration. Once you registered under Section 20, under the new provisions, then it will have a tenure of 4 years or 3 years, depending on circumstances. So once it is 5 years, once in 5 years, a renewal to be done. 6 months prior to the expiry of the 5 years of registration, you have to make application for renewal. Still you have time ahead. Suppose 2020, by 2025, then it expires, okay? Because 3 months time is given for commissioner to dispose. So therefore, by September 2025, that means 6 months prior to September 2025, you have to make an application for seeking that.
I'll go on to the next question now, which is that what is the difference between corpus funds and specific purpose funds from the point of view of treatment in books and taxability?
So now the question is with regard to corpus fund versus the specific fund, correct?
Right.
See, the corpus fund is also termed that there are two types of donation, voluntary donation. One is the corpus donation. This is also termed as voluntary donation with a specific direction. The second category is simplicity called as the voluntary contribution. This is general. Now, this corpus donation, because there is a direction from the donor saying that you hold this towards the corpus, because corpus means it is a structure, a capital, it is a structure of the institution. Therefore, the money goes to the structure of the institution. That is called the corpus donation. Now, in the recent time, there is a concept called specific fund. Specific fund means that earmark fund the donor gives for a specific purpose, because he says they have to use this money for the specific purposes. So when there is a direction from the donor towards this specific purposes, it is called specified fund, because that board of trustees does not have the power to divert these funds for any other purpose than the purpose designated by the donor. So therefore, this also, it is strictly not as a corpus, but it is said to be a capital receipt, because there are two types. One is the capital receipt, other is the revenue receipt. In case of corpus donation, it is a capital receipt. In case of specified fund, it is a capital receipt. In case of voluntary contribution, without any direction, it is said to be a revenue receipt. Now, with regard to specified fund, what happens once you achieve or use for the object as designated by the donor, then to that extent, you have to reflect in your books of account, transfer from specific fund to the income and expenditure as an income, and the expenditure you have incurred will utilize by showing as an expense. So this is the difference between corpus fund and specific fund. All specific fund is not corpus, but all corpus also need not be a specific fund. Because there is a specific, in corpus, they only state this is towards the corpus. They need not specify the usage of money. But in case of specified fund, there is a direction from the donor specified for which the amount is to be earmarked and to be used. This is the difference. I think if we refer to Walter Kluwer's book of ours, we have drawn a distinction between all these three, that is corpus donation, specified, and what are the specified fund treatment we have explained. I think they will refer.
I'll move on to the last question for the day now, which is from Mr. Amarjeet Kamboj, which is that can trust registered under Section 12AA donate a complete unit, all assets, to another trust registered under Section 12AA? What are its tax implications?
See, once there are both the charitable institutions are registered under Section 12AA earlier or under the new provisions, again under Section 80G, then transfer of funds or transfer of asset can be made between one trust to another trust as a donation also. And in case of the immovable property, there is a movement from one trust to another institution, another trust or institution. Question arises, what is the treatment to be given? Whether to be shown as an income. If it is to be shown as an income, then how it can be shown as an expense? Because there is an obligation for charitable institution to apply 85% of the income. Say, for example, one trust gives a donation of building to another trust for 1 crore. Now, this shows this will be reflected as an income in the hands of the recipient donor. Then 1 crore. To that extent, you have to apply 85% of the income for charitable purposes. Now, in case of movement of asset, there is no movement of funds. Then how can you show this as a expenses? In such circumstances, that once the asset is recorded, it will be recorded as an application also, because it is amount to a application. It falls within the meaning of the term applied under section 11(1)(a). Therefore, it can be shown both as an income as well as application. Okay? Any more questions?
Thank you so much, sir. This has been a great session for us. And I would like to thank all of our attendees also. Very soon, you will receive an email from us with a link to this webinar for you to view it again, please.
Thank all viewers, thank the team, thanks Walter and Clovis. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.